Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. My name is Stella Ferris, and today we are talking about another glyph that's a pup called Solapup. So, have you ever felt like something's watching you, but not in a bad way, like the moon watching over the earth? That's what it felt like the day Solapup found me. It was just past dusk at the academy. Most of the other catchers were inside warming up by their glyph fire lanterns. Me, I was still outside, practicing, thinking, wishing. That's when I saw her. She padded in slow from the edge of the training forest. Little paws barely making a sound on the gravel. Her tail curled like a comet's trail. Her nose twitching like she was following a scent long lost. Her eyes? They were big and round, like she'd seen too much night and not enough day. She stopped 5 feet from me, sat down, tilted her head, and I whispered, "Are you someone's glyph?" She shook her head. A moment passed, and the wind carried a whisper of the name of Solapup to my mind. A glyph born from forgotten friendship and the warmth left behind in goodbyes. I reached out. She didn't flinch, just pressed her head into my palm like she'd been waiting for me longer than I'd been alive. So, this is the entry. Glyph entry, Solapup. Species, Solapup. Type, heart/light. Classification, solitary guide glyph. Height, 2 feet. Abilities, Echo Howl, calls out to hidden allies or awakens nearby glyphs from dormancy. Warm Glow, emits a calming aura that mends small emotional wounds. Pearl's Shield, its tail forms a protective spiral to deflect incoming attacks. Here's the lore from Solapup. Solapup is a rare glyph that only appears to those who feel forgotten or left behind. It bonds silently, instinctively choosing those whose hearts carry both strength and sorrow. Said if you ever see one under a crescent moon, you're about to meet a friend who will change your life. She hasn't left my side since, and every time someone says I was lucky to find her, I smile because I didn't find Solapup, she found me. Although it wasn't spoken out loud yet, it bloomed behind my eyes like a memory I'd never made. Soft and golden, it settled into my chest with the hush of someone or something sacred, something I had lost before I ever knew I needed it. A glyph born from forgotten friendship and the warmth it left behind in goodbyes. She stood there quietly beneath the swaying veil of willow branches, her form shimmering at the edges like sunlight seen through tears. Her body was made of downy, light and patchy, dream-worn fur that flickered like faded Polaroids. Memories of campfires, laughter, and the last squeeze of a hug that meant everything. Her eyes, twin sunstones, held galaxies of once shared secrets and the ache of those who remembered too well. I took a slow breath and reached out, fingers trembling with some half-remembered hope. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, pressing her head into my palm with a sigh so soft it might have been the rustle of grass. It was as if she'd been waiting for me longer than I'd been alive, as I've already said once. As if my presence completed a story she had been writing alone in the dark. And in that touch, something within me realigned. The grief I didn't know I'd carried out of outgrown tree forts, lost pen pals, and the scent of a friend's sweatshirt you never got to return. Lifted just a little. Not erased, just held. Held by her, by Solapup. I whispered to her, not commands, not coaxing. Just thoughts, feelings, fragments of all the friends I've had once. The ones who had drifted away with time or distance or silence. Solapup seemed to understand. She was made of that very ache. the warmth behind in goodbyes, too soft to be noticed when they first fell. I finally unclipped the locket shaped still from my belt, the kind used for catching glyphs who required something more than a flash of light and a name. This wasn't a battle, it was a bond. The locket opened like a blooming flower, casting out a slow pulse of golden energy, inviting, not demanding. Solapup stepped forward on her own. She sniffed the seal, paused, then looked up at me again. There was a flicker in her eyes, not hesitation but recognition, and then gracefully, willingly, she pressed her nose to the locket's heart. There was no burst, no dramatic sound. Just a soft shimmer, a warmth that pressed through the air like the final hug of an old friend. The locket glowed briefly, then clicked shut, its center now bearing a faint paw-shaped insignia, etched in soft amber light. I held it in both hands and closed my eyes. Solapup was with me now, not captured, chosen, and I knew I'd never walk alone again. Back at the sanctuary, the light outside had dulled to a soft twilight blue. The sky like brushed velvet behind the glass observatory dome. Solapup sat behind me on the pad at beach, her ears twitched as she took in the flickering glyph lanterns and the occasional calls of other glyphs settling into their dens for the night. She hadn't left my side since the moment I caught her. Professor Orion stood nearby, arms folded tightly over his dark robe, eyes fixed on the glowing sigil locket in my hand. His jaw was tense, thoughtful but stern. "You shouldn't keep her," he said finally, voice calm but resolute. "Solapup isn't like the others. She isn't meant to belong to anyone." I looked down at her. She was curled beside me now, head resting on my thigh, breathing soft and steady. I felt the ache in Orion's words. I really did. He wasn't being cold. He was just trying to protect something ancient, something sacred. But before I could respond, Professor Lang stepped into the room with a gentle click of his bracelets and that ever-curious look in his eyes. "Orion," he said, brushing a strand of silver-streaked hair behind his ear, "you're assuming she was taken. But you weren't there. Solapup chose her." Orion shook his head. "That kind of bond is dangerous. Solapup is woven from emotional residue, grief, nostalgia, memory. If Stella Ferris gets too attached, she'll feel everything Solapup remembers. And if Solapup starts mirroring her, the line between glyph and keeper could be blurred, beyond repair." Lang stepped closer to me, his gaze softening as he took a look at Solapup. "Or perhaps that's exactly what needs to happen. Maybe it's not about control. Maybe it's about healing." There was a long silence. I could feel both their eyes on me now, waiting to see where I stood between their philosophies. Solapup stirred gently, lifting her head and looking up at me with those sunlit eyes that held whole summers in their depths. I didn't feel danger. I felt understood. "She didn't come with me out of fear," I said quietly. "She came because something in both of us was waiting. I don't want to erase that." Professor Orion sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose, but said nothing more. Lang smiled. "She's not a tool," I added, my fingers brushing the top of Solapup's head. "She's a promise I made without knowing it, and I intend to keep it." Orion turned towards the window, his silhouette framed in the soft starlight. "Just be careful," he muttered. "Glyphs like Solapup don't break. They fade. And when they do, they take something with them." Lang laid a hand on my shoulder. "Then don't let her fade." I nodded, holding Solapup a little closer. She wouldn't fade, not while I remembered. Not while I cared. Not while she was home. The trouble started the next morning. It was supposed to be a routine, just a calibration of aura harmonics in the lower sanctum, a check-in with a few of the more sensitive glyphs, and a gentle field walk to help Solapup acclimate. But I should have noticed the signs. She'd been quiet at breakfast, unusually so. She didn't eat, didn't wag her tail, didn't nudge my hand like she always did. Instead, she sat by the window, staring out at the horizon with this distant look in her eyes, like she was listening to something no one else could hear. By the time we reached the auric chamber, she was trembling. Solapup, I knelt beside her. Hey, are you okay? She looked up at me with wide eyes, and then it hit me like a crashing tide. Grief. Here, ancient and sharp. It wasn't hers, wasn't mine. It was everyone's. All the heartbreak, all the goodbyes she'd ever absorbed, all the sorrow she was made to carry, and now it was spilling over. The walls of the chamber trembled as waves of emotional energy rippled out from her body in every direction. Lights flickered, instruments shrieked. Nearby glyphs backed away, uneasy, disoriented. I tried to reach her, but the air between us shimmered with a pressure I couldn't push through. Then the door burst open. Professor Orion stormed in, robes billowing behind him like a thundercloud. I told you this would happen, he snapped, striding towards me. She's not stable. She's too connected. She's an echo chamber for loss and longing. If she collapses now, she could take a dozen glyphs with her. I stood between him and Solapup, heart racing. She's not dangerous, she's hurting. She doesn't know how to carry it all. She shouldn't be carrying it all, Orion barked. You've let her bond too deeply. You're feeding her with your own unresolved pain. She's not just reflecting anymore, she's mirroring. And if we don't shut her down, we risk contaminating the entire resonance archive. Behind me, Solapup let out a soft whimpering yelp, like a child having a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. She was holding in on herself, light flickering across her fur and jagged, frantic pulses. I dropped to my knees. It's okay, Solapup. You don't have to hold it all. Just breathe, I'm here. Orion grabbed my arm. Stella Ferris, step away. That's an order. But I didn't move. I won't abandon her, just because she feels too much. For a second, Orion's face shifted. Something flickered there. Regret, fear. I couldn't tell. But he let go. Ling appeared in the doorway, calm and steady like always. He didn't raise his voice. She needs an anchor, not containment. And just like that, the battle became something quieter, no longer about authority, but belief. I turned back to Solapup and opened my arms. Come on, girl. Let some of it go. You don't have to be everyone's goodbye. Solapup blinked at me, breath ragged, and then collapsed into my chest. The pulse stopped, the light steadied, the energy felt quiet, like a sigh finally exhaled. She shook in my arms, tired but still here, alive and mine. Solapup slept for hours after the surge, curled in a sunbeam near the observatory window. Her breaths were shallow but steady, her glowing fur dimmed to a low amber hue. I sat beside her, one hand resting gently on her back, grounding her. Every so often, her ears would twitch at some ghost of a memory, ones I knew I'd never see but felt all the same. Professor Ling brought me tea and a blanket. He didn't say much, just stayed nearby, scribbling quiet notes into his ledger and occasionally humming a lullaby I didn't recognize but somehow still knew. But peace never lasts long when Orion's involved. He returned just after midday, the heavy doors to the upper chamber groaning open as he descended with quick, impatient steps. You should have released her, he said without preamble. His tone wasn't angry now, it was cold, worse than anger. This isn't care, Stella Ferris. It's codependency. I stood slowly, trying to keep my voice even. She's not just a mirror. She's a being. She chose me. And now she's breaking down, he said sharply. That surge wasn't a fluke. It was a warning. Solapup doesn't know how to separate what she absorbs from what she is. If you keep feeding her emotional weight, you're going to crush her and yourself. Lang didn't look up from his notebook, but still said, So what's your solution, Orion? Strip Solaferis of the bond? Lock Solapup away in containment like one of your artifact cases? If that's what keeps this place safe, Orion shot back, then yes. That that did it. I stepped forward, not backing down this time. I know you've seen things fall apart before. I know you think detachment keeps you strong. But that's not what Solapup is, or what Solapup needs. She doesn't need a cage. She needs someone who won't let go. Orion's eyes narrowed. And what happens when she starts feeling everything you're too afraid to admit? What happens when she unearths things even you can't control? I talk to her, I said. I help her. We grow through it together. His silence was loud. For a moment I thought he might lash out again, but then his expression shifted. There was something older behind his gaze now, tired, haunted. I had one, he said, quietly. Years ago, a glyph like her, a heart bound. It didn't end well. Ling finally looked up, his voice gentler now. And that wasn't Stella Ferris's fault, or Solapup's. You're letting the past choose your judgment. Orion turned on his heels and walked towards the observatory doors, but just before leaving he paused and said, You've made your choice. I hope for all of our sakes it doesn't break you. And then he was gone. Lang exhaled softly and scribbled something into his notes. Solapup stirred behind me. I turned and saw her eyes open, slow and heavy but clear. She was watching me. I'm still here, I whispered. She pressed her forehead to my leg, not because I was her master, but because I was her safe place. And wherever storms came next, we'd face them together. That night when I went to bed, I had a weird dream. The air was heavy with memory in the glass wild. Back then, Orion wasn't Professor Orion. He was just Kyle, the youngest keeper to earn access to the deep sanctum, a prodigy, brilliant, intense, barely 20 and already convinced he could rewrite the rules of Glyph resonance with logic and discipline alone. But it wasn't calculation that brought her to him. His loneliness. She came during a containment breach, a small, quiet shape curled in a wreckage of a shattered prism cage, made of candlelight and dust, with ears like folded silk and eyes that held entire lullabies. She didn't run. She just looked at him like she knew something he didn't even know about himself. He named her Kindaloon, a glyph of comfort, of dreams, of the last breath before sleep. She was delicate, sensitive, more attuned to emotional frequencies than any glyph ever recorded. At first she barely spoke, but over time she warmed to his presence. She'd nuzzle his wrists during late-night studies, hum to him when the silence got too heavy. When he couldn't sleep, she'd dream for him. And slowly, without knowing, Kyle fed her. Not food, not energy, but sorrow. His mother who'd died before he even got his keeper's mark. His childhood home torn down to make way for labs, the pressure of brilliance, the fear of failure, all of it leaked into Kindaloon's core, quietly like rain through cracked stone. He didn't realize how much she'd taken on. Not until the day she fractured. It began with her voice faltering, little stutters in her song. Then came the trembling, the flickering of static in her glow. The sudden collapse during a routine calibration. She started weeping without tears, humming lullabies that made other glyphs panic or flee. He tried everything, sealing runes, harmonization pulses, isolation tanks. Nothing worked because the damage wasn't physical. She'd observed too much of him. The last time he saw her, she crawled into his lap and pressed her fading face into his chest. I held too much, she whispered. I thought if I kept it all, you wouldn't have to. Then she flickered once and vanished in his arms. No burst, no orb, no light, just a silence so heavy it took a part of him with it. And that's where my dream ended. When I woke and walked outside into the living room part of the sanctuary, Orion stood in the dark hallway outside. fingers tracing the lines of a worn pocket-sized prism he always carried but never showed. Inside it a faint shimmer, all that remained of Kindaloon. And now there was Solapup, bright, trembling alive, too much like her. He closed the prism slowly and stared at the doors that led to outside of my sanctuary. I was sitting beside my glyph that I had bonded, unaware that Orion wasn't angry out of pride. He was terrified, and unaware that he was even standing there to begin with. I don't say these things to make you mad, Orion said, his voice breaking the silence like glass underfoot. I jumped, heart hammering. Solapup immediately scurried at my side, growling low, more confused than hostile. Stars above, how did you get in here? I asked, clutching the edge of my desk as I turned towards him. Orion stood just inside my sanctum quarters, half shadowed in the doorway. He didn't look smug like about startling me, but he did look tired. Come now, Stella Ferris, he said, stepping in slowly, folding his arms behind his back. All teachers know the passcodes to their students' homes. That's just how it is on Nibiru. Safety protocol. Sounds more like a breach of trust, I muttered. His eyes swept the room, pausing on the books I hadn't shelved, a half-filled teacup, the glow of Solapup curled beside my foot cushion. Or floor cushion, sorry. You hadn't been sleeping, he observed. Neither has she. I didn't answer because he was right. She's processing a lot, I said after a beat, lowering my voice, but she's stabilizing. I can feel it. Orion approached slowly, keeping his distance from Solapup, who watched him carefully. She didn't growl again, but she pressed closer to my leg. You think you're doing the right thing. I know that, he said. But you don't see what I see yet, not really. I narrowed my eyes. And what's that? Weakness? No, he said, sharper than expected. Fragility. The kind that doesn't break with a bang, but with a whisper. And by the time you hear it, it's already gone. Stepped closer now and I saw it again, that flicker of pain he never let anyone touch. Spawn could destroy you both if it spirals. She's not a threat, Stella Ferris. She's a mirror. And if you start falling apart, she'll shatter. I stood up, fist clenched. Then maybe instead of waiting for us to break, you could help us not to. That stopped him. Not your enemy, he said quietly. I looked down at Solapup, her tail thumbed against the floor. I don't need you to be my enemy, I said. I just need you to stop expecting me to fail. Orion studied me for a long moment, then almost too soft to hear. He said, I expected myself to fail, and I did. He turned for the door, but paused before leaving. She reminds me of someone I couldn't save, he said. I really, really hope you're stronger than I was. Then he left the door closing behind him with a slow hiss of air and silence. Solapup looked up at me, her eyes glowing faintly. I am stronger, I whispered, resting my hand on her head, because I've got you. And that's been the story for this week's podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and may the gods of Nibiru shine their ever-present light down on you. I will see you next week. Goodbye.